My name's Connie Gross, and I'm an infant and early childhood mental health consultant for the Children's Resource Center in Bowling Green, Ohio. And today's parent chat is called Thriving Through Threes. This stage of development is a really exciting time, but has some challenges too. And maybe you've heard it referred to as raising a three-nager. And that has to do with a lot of emotional kind of highs and lows during this time. So, first, we're going to look at social and emotional development. What's happening for the 3 year old? Well, there's a high drive for independence, and you might have seen some of that in the second year of life as well. It's important to note that that's normal for them to want to do things on their own and healthy. They also, though, might have a limited understanding of what their own limitations are or safety concerns. And so, keeping that in mind when we think about our kiddo wanting to do things on their own and how we can help guide and protect them. The second thing here is that we might see an increase in fears. This has to do in large part with an increase in imagination at this age, which is awesome. But it can mean that we see an increase in some potential fears too. This is commonly the age where we start to see things like being afraid of monsters or being afraid of the dark, things like that. The third developmental milestone there is that we might see our kiddos showing empathy without prompting. So, this means that maybe they see a sibling or a peer who's upset or crying, and they might go over and try to share a toy with them or hug them. And you might have seen that in your younger child too. In general, they'd seen you possibly or other caregivers showing empathy in that way when someone's upset. And so they're kind of doing what they've seen modeled for them. The key to this is that they're doing it without prompting. So they're recognizing that someone else is upset and then they're showing an act of compassion. The fourth bullet there says that there's an increase in interest in playing with peers and an increased ability to share. So, generally, prior to this stage, children are engaged in more parallel play. So, they're playing beside their peers. They may be playing with the same or similar toys, but not tons of interaction. And the play definitely is not interacting. At this stage of development, the child's able to have more interaction in their play. And so, again, due to that increase in imagination, we might see more dramatic play, like pretending to play house, take care of baby dolls, or more of like grocery store or something like that, superheroes, some type of dress up imaginative play. And we might see that they have an increased ability to share. Now, that doesn't always mean that they're going to want to or that they're going to be really good at it. This is a skill that needs lots of practice. The next thing there is we might see some beginning or developing problem solving skills. And so this means that our 3 year old matches that independence and starts to think about problems and how they might be able to solve them. So during this stage of development, we might see our 3 year old push a chair over from the table to the counter and climb up on the chair and up on the counter to get their cup, solving the problem of wanting a drink. And although that can be really exciting, it can maybe be a bit scary too, because, like we said at the top there, they have that increased drive for independence, but they might not always understand some of the safety concerns that we have. So, lots of supervision needed at this age. And then the last social emotional developmental milestone we're going to talk about today is that they might be showing an increased variety of emotions, but still kind of sticking with that limited ability to verbally express them. So, all of these, increased fear, increased social interactions, increased recognizing other people's feelings and showing empathy, increased independence can lead to a lot of big feelings, but there may be some limited ability to really express those. And again, can kind of escalate what might look like more frequent tantrums during this age, and might be the reason that it's referred to as raising a three-nager during this stage. So, before we get into what we can do, some real strategies, I wanted to just share some images of other caregivers who are in this phase of life right now. This first picture says she keeps dropping her fork. And as you can see, she's having some pretty big feelings. She wants to keep those oven mitts on and hold her fork, and she's not able to do that. And she has some pretty big feelings about it. I think this points to what we talked about before, having some limited problem solving skills. For a grown up, we might just look and say, well, we need to take one of the oven mitts off. But she has an idea in her mind about how she'd like that to go, as far as wearing the oven mitts and using the fork. And when that doesn't go the way she hoped, she's really disappointed, and she might be not really able to verbally express those feelings. The second image says he doesn't want to go, even though we've repeatedly told him we're not going anywhere. This might just be the grown up trying to make their best guess at what he's upset about. Maybe he's able to verbally express some of that. But in general, those big conflicting feelings are hard to deal with. And it looks like he is having a hard time coping. And then in the third image here, I threw away the gum he was chewing that he found on the outside of the trash can at Old Navy. Obviously, no caregiver would want their kiddo chewing that used gum. But he has some big feelings about that. He found that gum, and obviously he wanted to be chewing it. And he might have a real limited ability in expressing how disappointing or upsetting that is that he can't have that gum. So, we're going to talk about some strategies we could do to help our kiddos navigate this age and to try to help build some skill for them. A lot of these strategies, we have an individual video about that strategy on our YouTube channel. So, we're going to be able to check those out in detail if you'd like. Two. The first area we're going to talk about is building self regulation, and this is the ability to control the frequency and intensity of impulses. It's important to note that at this age, in general, kiddos are more of co regulators, which means they really need an adult to help share their calm. Oftentimes, feelings are contagious. If you're ever at home and someone you live with comes home in a bad mood, in general, it doesn't stay that way really long either. Like our bad mood develops from being around their bad mood, or maybe we kind of share our more calm or happier mood with them, and they get cheered up a little bit. So, thinking about that, we want to think about that when our kiddos are upset too. It might be tempting at times when they're upset for us to start to feel upset because, obviously, when they're upset, there might be some behaviors that we don't like. But co regulation means that we can really share feelings with the child. And so, if that's the case, we want to stay calm, right? We want to try to share our calm with the child. So, doing some things like sitting near them, taking deep breaths yourself, possibly rubbing their back, or just sitting with them and being present in the moment with them, trying not to do lots of talking until they're calm, and then we'll be able to move into more of the talking part of that. The second strategy here is we want to label emotions. Like we talked about already, sometimes the tantrums might come from a feeling that is big and that we don't really have the word for it. So we want to label their feelings by saying something like, oh, Ethan, I see that you are very disappointed right now. And then, maybe following that up with either setting a limit. We can't go outside, but we could do this, or trying to help them cope. I see you're very disappointed right now. Would you like to come and sit with me? And then the third strategy here is a visual schedule. In general, a visual schedule can be really helpful for a lot of things, but one thing is that it makes our day and our routine predictable. It shows them kind of what comes next, and we can use that to redirect some challenging behavior, maybe. So, maybe showing them when some preferred activities are. So, for example, if your kiddo doesn't like cleanup time, we can show them how we're going to clean up right now, and then we're going to have dinner, and then we will get to go outside. So, using that to motivate them to get through some of the less desired activities and looking forward to the activities that they do enjoy. A visual schedule also makes our day predictable. And when things feel predictable, it feels safer. And we're less likely to see challenging behaviors when kiddos feel safe, both emotionally and physically. The next area we're going to talk about is initiative, and this is the drive to do things independently. The first strategy we want to do is we want to try to encourage safe exploration. And I think it pairs nicely with the second one there of getting involved. You know, when your kiddo is in this stage of life, when they're 3, like we've already talked about, they may want to do some things that they don't really understand the potential danger of. So, for example, this kiddo is wanting to empty the dishwasher, which is great. We want to get them involved, right? We want to get them doing some things that are helpful and kind and also kind of keeps them busy. But there might be some potential dangers in emptying the dishwasher, like the knives, for example. So, as the parent or caregiver, you'll have to decide what works best in your home. There's a couple of options. One is like we see this caregiver doing, where she's really being very present in the moment when he's dealing with the silverware, the knife basket there. And so maybe in your home, you would feel like it was okay for your child to put the knives away if you were showing them where are the safe places to touch, kind of giving them directions about how they safely hold a knife, and staying right there with them until it's put safely away. Or potentially you think, not yet. And that's okay too. You might decide to go ahead and pull the knives out of the silverware basket and then get your kiddo involved by saying something like, "Hey, buddy, you want to come help me empty the dishwasher?" Um, Having our kiddos involved in household things gives us a really great opportunity to praise um, behaviors that we want to see more of, like helping or using teamwork. Um, in general, getting a kiddo involved can also change their level of stimulation. So, if your kiddo's maybe feeling a bit bored, let's say, we might see some challenging behavior there during that time because, in general, children don't handle bored really well. They are going to find something to do, and it's often things we really would rather they not do. So, getting them involved in something and keeping them busy does often help reduce some of those challenging behaviors. And then the last strategy here for initiative is we want to notice language, especially emotion language, but really any language that we want to see more of. So we really want to label our feelings, label their feelings, and then if they use emotion language, we want to praise them by saying something like, "I love that you told me how you were feeling," or "You told me you were sad, and I'm here to help you." So, really praising when they do use that emotion language. We might be able to increase some of that by using like some feelings visuals or things like that in those early stages. Then the last area we're going to talk about today is attachment relationships. When we're thinking about this challenging time, here are some things that can help our 3-year-olds really thrive. And the first one here is quality time. Quality time means that for a short period of time, we are not distracted by anything. Our focus is solely on our child. And so that means we would put down our cell phone, turn off the TV, try to limit some of the distractions. Now, we often will think, I don't really have time to play. In 7 minutes, the oven timer is going to go off, or we're going to have to get ready for bed in 10 minutes, or whatever the case might be. But that's really our adult brain thinking about play from beginning to end. But children don't necessarily think about play in that way. Children's play is oftentimes interrupted, and it might begin and start many times over. And they oftentimes don't plan out all of the components of play. So it's okay if we only have a few minutes until dinner is going to be ready. And we might just be present in that moment, maybe commenting on what our child is doing. Oh, he knocked over that tower. Um, or you have 5 guys in that truck. Oh my goodness, now you're gonna put another one in there. Wow, that truck is big and strong. So just commenting on what your child is doing, and I'm sure you'll see their face light up when you start doing this. In the beginning, if you haven't practiced this a lot, it can be something that might feel a bit uncomfortable for the grown-up, but just know that your child will love getting the attention and notice for good behavior. And this can actually extend their quiet playtime. The next thing here is to create rituals. A ritual means that we do it the same way every time. And so this can be really helpful in those times of day that are really challenging, like having maybe a bedtime ritual or a morning ritual, depending on how things go and when are the challenging times of day in your home. You might do some things to build in some connection points. So, adding in maybe some finger plays or I love you rituals, which you can find out more about on our YouTube channel or from Dr. Becky Bailey's Conscious Discipline. You could add music to your ritual. You could use visuals, like we've already kind of talked about. You could have a visual just for a bedtime routine or just for mealtime or whenever those challenging times of day are. And then the third strategy here is to reassure them of safety. A lot of times, big feelings come around the idea that we might not feel totally safe. And that might be physical safety or it could be emotional safety. Sometimes grown-ups or other caregivers, they might not recognize that feeling threatened. Maybe you look at that situation and say, he is safe, there's nothing wrong there, but even just the feeling of disappointment when things go differently than we expected, that even for grown-ups doesn't always feel safe. It feels a bit uncertain, and that's uncomfortable. And as grown-ups, we're able to better cope with those feelings because we have lots of coping skills. But for young children, that can be really challenging. And so when you recognize that your kiddo's having some of those big feelings, just saying something like, Colton, I see that you're so upset, but I'm here and you're safe and we'll get through this together. Here's some additional resources if you would like to know more about thriving through the threes. And we have a lot of videos for caregivers on our YouTube channel about a wide variety of social emotional wellness topics. And I hope you'll follow us on our Facebook page, CRC Infant and Early Childhood Connection. We share tips for caregivers every single day on that page. Thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful.